Roster Watch Nation, what is up? I am Cody Carpentier, and I'm here today to talk to you about the 2023 Roster Watch All-Rookie Team. Pretty fantastic class. You kind of putting a bow on this group of 2023 as we move into 2024. If you've been tapped in to Roster Watch on YouTube or on podcast, you've known, or on RosterWatch.com, that we're doing rookie spotlights right now on a bevy of wide receivers in the Shrine and Senior Bowl games starting in just about a week and a half. So every day this week, we're going to have live videos up. Myself, Alex, the Trash Man will be live talking about some of these guys from the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl, as well as next week, starting to talk about running backs as we prepare to be in Dallas for the Shrine Bowl, not this weekend, but the next weekend. And then that next week is Senior Bowl week. So make sure you stay tuned in, stay tapped in for all those fun things coming up. But first and foremost, the all-rookie team here from Roster Watch. Couple statistics I found. Again, this is just a receiver one only. Rookie receivers showed up big in 2023. This is from Troy Vincent Sr. at the NFL. The NFL combined to set a new rookie record for receptions, receiving yards, and touchdown catches. All the rookies combined. This is not just one guy. Total receptions, 1,795. Total receiving yards this year, 19,164. Total touchdown receptions, 117. That's all just done by these rookies. And that's going to be why when I talk about these rookies here in just a second, you're going to see I got 3 dudes named, but 3 more are honorable mentions because this group is fantastic. But first and foremost, I got to ask you to please like that button, click that like button, click subscribe, stay tapped in here at Roster Watch on YouTube and on the podcast. Quarterback, though, this is going to be a layup. It's CJ Stroud. There was really no question after the season started who this guy was going to be. Most passing yards in a single game within the first 2 career starts. CJ Stroud had 2 games over 380. Only a couple of other quarterbacks have done that in their career. Sam Howell had 2 games over 380. Cam Newton had 2 games over 380. Deshaun Watson and Kirk Cousins. He's the youngest player, second youngest player ever to throw over 400 yards in a game. Matthew Stafford had him beat by just a mere 60, 70 days. Stroud brought this team from a top 3 draft pick to the playoffs, and now they won their wild card round game against Cleveland Browns again. Made these selections before that game, but Stroud has been doing his thing. Started off his career 177 plus passes consecutive with no interception, breaking Dak Prescott's record of 176. CJ Stroud had, I definitely will say I had question marks coming in. I thought he had a ceiling. And I thought that ceiling was just being a very good quarterback in the NFL. I thought he was going to be in that Kirk Cousins tier. I thought he was going to be a good quarterback. I comped him to a Teddy Bridgewater plus. And those of you that don't remember Teddy Bridgewater coming out, you don't remember Teddy Bridgewater coming out. That's your own damn fault. Teddy Bridgewater was a good quarterback. Stroud, I didn't think had the ceiling to hit the Burrow, the Mahomes level. Openly said that. Stroud has inked himself in the conversation to being the best, if not the best, or a top 3 quarterback in all of football. In Dynasty, he's climbed himself into that conversation quickly. And in the NFL, in the grand scheme of things, right now, it looks like he belongs in that top 3 conversation with the likes of Burrow. And if you want to put Mahomes in there, no, we're talking NFL, we're not talking fantasy here. So I wouldn't put Josh Allen quite in that number 1 spot, but I think Stroud's making a damn good case to be up there, just 22 years old. That's quarterback. Running back, 2 guys. You started the year off with 2 guys, and we're going to end with the same 2 guys, Mr. Jahmyr Gibbs, and Bijan Robinson. Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit early on this year. It looked like really they were going to kind of waste him. He ended up the season with 182 carries, 945 yards, and 10 rushing touchdowns. 10 rushing touchdowns and nearly 1,000 yards rushing for Mr. Jahmyr Gibbs, averaged 5.2 yards per attempt. In the receiving game, he had 52 receptions, 316 yards, and a touchdown. Again, then he showed up last night in the playoffs, 8 carries, 25 yards, 4 for 43, scored a touchdown, helping Detroit win football games. And when you looked at it, it did look like Montgomery was going to screw him in the early part of the season. But Jahmyr Gibbs comes through, again, nearly clips 1,000 yards. He had 1 game over 20 carries in the season. That was against the Raiders back in week 13 or 14. But as the season went on, the role started to expand for Gibbs, and really with Montgomery getting hurt, it allowed Gibbs to take over and kind of grow into that. The other one was Bijan. And again, we didn't get to see hyper Bijan. We didn't get to see him push for 1,700 rushing yards like people were hoping for and paying that top 10 price in fantasy football for. But we did see Gibbs we did see Bijan kind of get up into that conversation, near 1,000 yards rushing, 4 rushing touchdowns. He had 86 targets, ended the season pretty hot, 4 receiving touchdowns. Tyler Algier had 1,000 rushing yards as a rookie, but Bijan couldn't quite get there. So Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs take the 2 spots at the running back position. I should preface this with saying this is how the team is going to be built, the all-rookie team right here. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 5 offensive linemen. We do have 3 honorable mentions on offense. On defense, we'll have 4 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, 4 DBs, and 3 honorable mention. Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, star-studded players in the NFL, helping their teams to get to the next level. Atlanta, not. They're picking in the same spot again this year. They're going to be picking number 8 overall. Again, I think for the 3rd time in 4 years. So that's fantastic. We'll see what they end up with for a head coach, see if they can advance Bijan in his career a little bit more than Arthur Smith could. But Jahmyr Gibbs doing all those things that Jahmyr Gibbs kind of promised and was looked at to be when he was used with that top 15 draft pick by the Detroit Lions. Detroit, again, winning last night against the Los Angeles Rams. A couple other disappointing pieces. Kendre Miller, Zach Charbonnet, guys that disappointed. They were the next 2 guys off the board in the NFL draft. Devon Achane could have been in a conversation. He did not make the honorable mentions team. Achane had a couple of strong games, looking like a hyper-prolific running back, but again, couldn't stay healthy for the longevity of the season. Tyjae Spears, 3rd-round pick, had a very good year, but not quite on the level to get up here. Chase Brown, another interesting one that had a great season, finishing a great season for the Cincinnati Bengals. What was the other one? Keaton Mitchell from Baltimore is another one that did not make an honorable mention, but came on with due opportunity before a season-ending injury shorted his season. At the wide receiver position, this is the one really that's loaded. That's going to make this whole conversation tough. Is first and foremost, you got to give it to the guy last night who went up for over 180 receiving yards. And on the season, set every record. Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua is number 1. Puka Nacua wasn't the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th wide receiver off the board. He didn't go until the 5th round, pick 177. There's some guys on here that didn't really catch a football or do anything that were drafted ahead of him, like Justin Shorter, Tyler Scott, Charlie Jones. I like Charlie Jones. Darius Davis returned a couple punts, but these guys were the 4 guys in front of him, also counting Dontavian Wicks in there. But Puka Nacua set all kinds of records, had 105 catches, 1,486 yards, both single-season records. Jalen Waddle had 104 catches with the Dolphins in 2021. Of course, Puka with 105. Bill Groman back in like the 60s for the Oilers had 1,473. Puka goes for 1,486. Puka Nacua it came in late. And when the Cooper Kupp injury came in before the season, if those remember, Cooper Kupp had another hamstring injury, so he went to Minneapolis to meet with a hamstring specialist, which I thought was kind of weird, and I think a lot of people did. It caused Puka Nacua to, I remember, jump up into like the 210, 212, 301 area in those seasonal drafts, especially in the FFPC. And boy, did that pay off. Puka Nacua absolutely launching himself into the top 10 of the dynasty realm of wide receivers, and had massive games. 163 yards against Indianapolis in week 4, 147 in week 2 against San Francisco. In his rookie debut, he had 15 targets, 10 receptions, 119 yards. If you want to think back, I remember having those conversations in week 3. It was like, what is this guy? What do we get? 35 targets the first weeks? What are we doing here with Puka Nacua? But he, again, he's deserving of this number 1 spot right here. When you want to compare him to these other guys, it's Puka Nacua, 1,486. Bill Groman, 1,473. Everybody knows Jamar Chase, 1,455. Justin Jefferson, 1,400. He played in 17 games, as did Jamar Chase, but Justin Jefferson only played in 16. So, we're going to have that 17-game, 16-game thing here, but it would have taken Jefferson. He would have had to have over 86 yards to surpass a 1,486, but Jefferson only played in 16. Anquan Bolden, 1,377. And then the receiving category, Puka Nacua had 105 receptions. Jalen Waddle, 104. Anquan Bolden, 101. Michael Thomas all the way down to 92. So he is wide receiver number 1. Now you have a list of guys. This one makes it tough, is that all 5 of these guys, I think, deserve to be in these 2 spots right here. Jordan Addison, number 1, first and foremost. Jordan Addison stepped in when Justin Jefferson was hurt. Jordan Addison finished with 911 receiving yards this season. nearly cresting up into the 1,000 marker. He had 70 receptions in 17 games. He had 10 receiving touchdowns. He had a couple of massive games, 6 receptions for 111 and 2 touchdowns against the Bengals in overtime. That game went to, and the Vikings lost week, I think it was 8 against San Francisco. He had 7 receptions for 123 and 2 touchdowns. That was kind of the one that put him on the marker. But if you go back to the start of the season, he had 6 games out of 8 where he scored a touchdown. And that really is what elevated Jordan Addison early, is his ability to be in the moment right away. It didn't take no warm-up. Week 1, 4 for 61 and a touchdown against Tampa Bay. Jordan Addison jumped in the blocks and having 911 receiving yards. These are a couple of the names that were in the same ballpark as rookies. Devonta Smith had 64 receptions, 916 yards, 5 touchdowns. Jordan Addison, 70 receptions, 911 yards, 10 touchdowns. Couple other names here. Deshaun Jackson had 912 yards, 2 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 912 yards, 5 touchdowns. T. Higgins, 908 yards, 6 touchdowns. Sammy White, 906 yards, 10 touchdowns. So he's right in the middle of all these guys, and it projects to be another increase into year 2 for the Minnesota Vikings if they can get another quarterback, or if they do keep Kirk Cousins, whoever it may be. We'll give them the opportunity. I'm just checking out the chat right now. What's going on, my brother Ray G? How we doing, brother? And Dr. Smooth in the house. He said, I got to go back to work. Love the show. Going to watch rest later. Dr. Smooth, we appreciate you for tuning in and tapping in. Anybody else that is in here on YouTube, please click that like button. Please click subscribe. Again, turn those notification bells on, because we'll be live tomorrow. We'll be live Thursday. We'll be live Friday doing Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl previews for the wide receiver position. And then next week, we'll be getting ready more and more for the Shrine Bowl. Then that weekend, we will be live 2 or 3 times at the Shrine Bowl. And the following week, we'll be live 2 or 3 times from the Senior Bowl, recapping the day that was at those events. That'll be myself. Byron will be out there probably at the Shrine Bowl. Trashman will be at the Shrine Bowl. And then at the Senior Bowl, Alex will be down there as well. So we're going to have a ton of content coming over the course of the next 3 weeks. And that's not even counting February into the Combine, et cetera, et cetera. So stay tuned in and stay tapped in. We appreciate you guys. Number 3. So we got Puka Nacua. We got Jordan Addison. Now we got Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is a guy that completely jumped into this role with the Baltimore Ravens and became the A1 day one. He became the best receiver in the room. It feels like right away. It didn't feel like it took long for Zay to kind of be that guy and take the opportunities. Again, playing with Rashad Bateman, a guy that has been dealing with injuries for the last couple of seasons, and Odell Beckham, who hasn't really been himself either. Zay Flowers finished the season with 77 receptions, 858 yards. He had 5 touchdowns. He did miss 1 game, but again, he's another guy. Week 1 this year, 9 receptions on 10 targets, 78 yards, and just was a dynamo for this Baltimore Ravens offense, a team that many said, oh, they can't have a wide receiver that's going to be worth a damn. They don't know how to utilize them. They had Hollywood Brown. They don't know how to utilize them. Some guys that are in the same ballpark of output for their rookie season from Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers had 77 receptions at 108 targets, 858 yards. T.Y. Hilton had 861 yards, 7 touchdowns. Jerry Jeudy, 856 and 3 touchdowns. Marvin Harrison, 836 and 8 touchdowns. Cooper Kupp, 869 and 5 touchdowns. Again, a bevy of strong names surrounding Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers attached to the soon-to-be-named NFL MVP himself, Lamar Jackson. So those are your 3 receivers making the RosterWatch first team. Puka Nacua, Jordan Addison, and Zay Flowers. And the honorable mentions, again, Rashee Rice. This is going to be it right here. I'm just going to keep going into it because they are honorable mentions overall, the first team offense. They're all receivers. So Rashee Rice finished the season with 79 receptions, 938 yards, and 7 touchdowns, almost mimicking what CeeDee Lamb did a couple years ago. 935 yards, 74 receptions, 5 touchdowns. Just a titch ahead of the great Jerry Rice. So Rashee Rice in strong company, sandwiched between CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Rice, Julio Jones, Mike Williams, Andre Johnson, as far as his year 1 output. Rashee Rice grew into this role as the season went on with the Kansas City Chiefs and really hasn't looked back. He's grown as the seasons went by, and he's become the number 1 wide receiver, even the number 1 option as of late, with Travis Kelce kind of going down. But the last 2 games, 5 receptions, 127 against the Bengals, 8 receptions, 130 and a touchdown against the Dolphins. Earlier this year, we were hoping for it. This is a Senior Bowl guy. We were hoping Rashee Rice would take over, and it really took him until like that Raider game when he went for 100 yards and a touchdown to go, okay, this is the guy. And then it was on from there. Next, Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed of the Green Bay Packers, the youngest team in football, the youngest offense in football, the Green Bay Packers. Jayden Reed finished the season 64 carries, 793 yards, and 8 touchdowns. But not only did he do it through the air, he had 11 carries for 119 yards and 2 touchdowns, amassing a total of 912 yards from scrimmage. Jayden Reed finished with 793 receiving yards, top 100 among all wide receivers all time. 96th. 98th was Percy Harvin with 790 and 6 touchdowns, a very similar type of a player. When I asked him at the Senior Bowl, again, who's a player that you model your game after? It was the one and only Kadarius Toney. Not quite the answer I was expecting. I was expecting something closer to Percy Harvin or a Reggie Bush, whatever it may be. But Jayden Reed ended up with comping himself to Kadarius Toney. And in year one, he had more output than Kadarius Toney has had in 3 seasons. So shout out to Jayden Reed for that. Then the third and final honorable mention here on the offensive side of the football. Again, the 6th receiver here we're talking about is Mr. Tank Dell. Tank Dell, 47 receptions, 709, 7 touchdowns. He averaged 15.1 yards per reception for the Houston Texans. Then he went down in the first game of December against the Denver Broncos. And he's not a part of this current Houston Texans team. People are forgetting, we didn't really get Tank and Nico together a ton down the stretch because of injuries both ways. Now we got just Nico. We got Noah Brown. We got a little Brevin Jordan had a long touchdown, but Nico and Tank, I think having Tank in this offense would give you a different dynamic right now, but he burst on the scene quick this year. 7 for 72 in week 2 with a touchdown, 5 for 145 in week 3 with a touchdown. He had a game against Tampa where he went 6 for 114, 2 touchdowns, 8 for 149, and a touchdown against Arizona. Just a hyper-dynamic wide receiver for the Houston Texans this season, and finished again with 709 yards in 11 games. And you scroll down and you see where Tank Dell kind of fits in with the grand scheme of everybody else. He's next to guys that played 16 games, like Stephon Diggs played 13, all right? Stephon Diggs, his rookie season, played 13 games for the Minnesota Vikings, had 720 receiving yards, playing with Teddy Bridgewater, 4 touchdowns. Tank Dell, 709, 7 touchdowns in 11 games. A couple of these other guys that are ahead of him, Darius Slayton had 740 his rookie season. Brandon Ayuk had 748 and 5 his rookie season. Mike Wallace is also on here with 756 and 6 touchdowns. So Tank Dell just cresting the top 150 all time in receiving yards, just a titch ahead of Cortland Sutton at 704 and a titch ahead of Sterling Shepard at 683. So a very good rookie season for Tank Dell. And you could have expected if he would have finished the season out, he probably would have crested 1,000. And had he not got hurt, I think he would have probably made this first team all roster watch ahead of probably Jordan Addison for that third spot at the wide receiver position. Tight end. Is there really anybody else you can put in here than Sam Laporta? A lot of these rookie tight ends played great all season, but the one and only Sam Laporta was the guy. He set the records this year: 86 catches, 889 yards, 10 receiving touchdowns. These are all rookie records for the Detroit Lions. All time is the question. All time records by the tight end position, most of them are going to end up belonging to Sam Laporta. Mike Ditka has the all-time record for receiving yards in a season, 1,076 yards. Kyle Pitts was short of that, 1,026 in 2021. Jeremy Shockey, 894 back in 2002, and Sam Laporta comes in 4th with 889, just 20 ahead of Keith Jackson, who finished in 5th. Most receptions by a rookie all-time, 86. 5 ahead of Keith Jackson for number 1 all-time. He had 10 receiving touchdowns, which ties Rob Gronkowski for 2nd all-time, just 2 behind Mike Ditka. Most targets all-time belong to Jeremy Shockey with 128. Sam Laporta comes in 2nd with 120. Some other rookies that are on this list that need to be conversed. Dalton Kincaid finishes with 91 targets, which is good for 5th all-time at the tight end position. He did have 673 receiving yards, which is good for 10th all-time, just about 50 yards behind Evan Ingram. Those two were the guys that succeeded past everybody else. Tucker Kraft had 355 receiving yards for the Green Bay Packers this year, as did Luke Musgrave, 352. They kind of split work because Musgrave was hurt for part of the year. Tucker Kraft didn't really get much work in the first part of the season. So if you combine both these guys and what they did both in the Green Bay Packers, they combined for just north of 700 yards and 3 touchdowns, 65 receptions, 86 targets, all things that make them a top 10 combination, right? If there was one dude here, if they didn't draft 2 tight ends, because heaven forbid the Packers don't draft 2, they only draft 1. If they drafted one of these cats and they were healthy all season, we'd be talking about one of these guys likely in that same conversation as Laporta and Kincaid, but that's not what we're dealing with today. Past that, it was Michael Mayer. He had 304 yards and 2 touchdowns. Just a good group of tight ends overall for this class to compute and come through into 2024. On the offensive line, first and foremost, we start with DeJuan Jones from the Cleveland Browns. He played in 11 games this season. Steve Avila at the guard position for the Los Angeles Rams. John Michael Schmitz from the New York Giants. Peter Skoronski from the Tennessee Titans. And Paris Johnson, the top 5 overall draft pick by the Arizona Cardinals. I'm not going to talk much about these guys and their statistics because they're offensive linemen. And again, this channel is based around fantasy, but I did want to say DeJuan Jones was the 6'8" mountain of a man from Ohio State that many people questioned his ability to get to the NFL and stay undersized. And both he and Paris Johnson, 2 Ohio State tackles, made it through into the NFL. John Michael Schmitz for the New York Giants this season was a key cog in that center position. Again, they haven't been good, but he played, he was the guy, and there wasn't really a ton of centers to pick from. Steve Avila was a starting guy for the Los Angeles Rams this season. They kind of jumped right in. He played last night against the Detroit Lions. He played 17 games this season, did Steve Avila, and then Peter Skoronski, the one that they took over. Remember, they took Peter Skoronski over Will Levis in the first round. He ended up playing 14 games this season, did deal with a little bit of an injury there, but finished out with 14 games played. Again, we talked about the honorable mentions on offense. Rashee Rice from the Kansas City Chiefs, Jaden Reed from the Green Bay Packers, and Tank Dell from the Houston Texans. Now let's go on to the defensive side of the football. I appreciate you guys jumping on here in the chat. A1, what's going on, brother? And Gooner Boy, what's going on? Just got off work. Hope you're doing well on this beautiful Monday, January 15th. I'm about to pop up this one sheet quick, and then I'm going to get into the defensive side of the football. All right, first and foremost right here, we're going to start out with Mr. Will Anderson. Will Anderson for the Houston Texans. Again, we just talked about how important C.J. Stroud was to this team, but Will Anderson came in from the jump, had 7 sacks, played in 15 games, had 29 total tackles. In week 1 against Baltimore, Will Anderson had a sack. It was just really about growing into this defense, growing into the opportunities, and being a guy that they could depend on, and being that guy from Alabama. He came in and snatched up 7 sacks in year 1. Did Mr. Will Anderson. Number 2 is Byron Young, another edge defender for this team here. 1 second. This is not loading. All right, there we go. Number 2 is Mr. Byron Young. Byron Young from the Los Angeles Rams. He was another Senior Bowl guy that was down there in Mobile and was drafted by the Rams. Not thought of lightly as a day 1 guy. He was 6'2", 250 pounds, kind of an undersized edge rusher, outside linebacker type of a guy from Tennessee. Ended up with 8 sacks this season, and I might as well lump it in right there. Kobe Turner. Kobe Turner is the interior defensive lineman for the Los Angeles Rams as well. He had 9 sacks this season, so these 2 guys combined had 17. Aaron Donald finished with 8. So Byron Young had 8. Aaron Donald had 8. Kobe Turner had 9 on the interior there. So Kobe Turner is also an interior defensive line, all rookie team for RosterWatch here. 9 sacks for Kobe Turner, 8 for Byron Young. And that you can kind of spell this if you're following along why the Rams have been successful. It's just because they had Puka Nacua, who was an all rookie team wide receiver, Steve Avila, all rookie team guard, Come down to the defensive side of the football, Kobe Turner, all rookie team defensive tackle. Byron Young, all rookie team defensive end. That's 4 players out of 22 just from the Los Angeles Rams. He had 42 solo tackles, did Byron Young, and 2 forced fumbles during the season this year. On the interior there, I just mentioned him. Kobe Turner was right there. One of the highest graded players also on all of PFF, the 10th ranked highest interior defensive lineman this season. And the other rookie is none other than Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter had his ebbs and flows, but he ended up being the 5th highest ranked defensive lineman per PFF this whole entire season. And Jalen Carter is Jalen Carter. There's really not much to be said. The Philadelphia Eagles have fallen off a little bit over the course of the last month, and they've lost 5 of the last 6 games. They're 1-5. But again, dropping to the 9th overall selection. Carter had 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He played in 16 games. It's Jalen Carter. There's no other defensive tackle that belongs in this conversation. If I pull up the NFL draft class from this past season, I scroll down here to the defensive side of the football, I can read a couple of the names that went off in the same area. So Jalen Carter, like I said, was the first defensive tackle off the board. Kalijah Cansey in Tampa dealt with a couple of injuries. Mozzie Smith, not quite up there. We do have an honorable mention, Brian Bresee, who was a first-round pick, 29th overall by the New Orleans Saints, and Tuli Tupo-Leotu from the Los Angeles Chargers, who's also in this conversation as a defensive lineman, not a defensive tackle, or edge rusher specified kind of in both conversations. At the linebacker position, the undrafted Ivan Pace from the Minnesota Vikings. Ivan Pace was a kind of to put it short, he was a menace. He was the 16th highest ranked linebacker this entire season. And you look at the names around him: Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, former first-round pick; Jordan Hicks, the Vikings thought of as number 1 linebacker; Roquan Smith was just a couple notches ahead of him, the linebacker from the Baltimore Ravens. He was a top 20 linebacker this entire season. Jack Campbell, first-round pick from the Detroit Lions. He was the number 76th ranked linebacker per PFF with just a 53.8 defensive rating, but on run defense, he pulled in a strong 77, which amounted to a good season for Jack Campbell. This Detroit Lions defense, I shouldn't say Detroit. The Detroit Lions draft compared to the Rams draft, very strong. We just talked about the Rams: Nacua, Avila, Turner, Young. That's 4 players for the Rams in this conversation. The Lions: Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Jack Campbell. And then at the defensive back position, I guess I'm spoiling it now, but Brian Branch, also the 4th. So last night, a fantastic game that finished up 24-23 in favor of the Lions. Featured 8 players out of, there's 22 listed here. 8 players out of 22 came from that game just alone last night. Rams and Lions, 2 teams that drafted very well, and they did the damn thing. 52 solo tackles for Jack Campbell this season, and just 2 sacks. And the third and final linebacker goes to Henry Te'o from the Houston Texans. Again, another team that you're like, didn't we just talk about a couple of Houston Texans? Yeah, we did. Will Anderson, Henry Te'o, and Tank Dell. Those are 3 wide receivers as well as CJ Stroud. So that's 4 guys on this list if you count Tank Dell, who was an honorable mention here. So Houston, again, another team that drafted very well this season. Te'o started 6 games this season, played in 14, and just was a good enough linebacker. There really wasn't a ton of players to converse about in this conversation here. But when you're looking at the rookie class alone, it was Campbell, it was Ivan Pace, and it was Henry Te'o. Those were the 3 guys that belonged. And there was a couple of other guys that could have been in the conversation, but there really wasn't a high snap count to make an argument to put him up here. Dorian Williams from Tulane was another Senior Bowl guy, had a good season for Buffalo, but really only played 110 snaps or about 110 snaps. Cam Jones from the Chiefs got a couple of opportunities, but really the list was shortened down to Pace, Te'o, and Campbell. Now at the defensive back position, the final players at cornerback and at safety. The easy layup here was Joey Porter. When I'm talking to my main man, Matty Q, over at Player Profiler, he's doing the cornerback rankings every single week. The one player that we both talked about every single week was Joey Porter. Joey Porter was up, Joey Porter was down, Joey Porter was up. But Joey Porter finished the season strong. He was the 6th highest ranked rookie cornerback, according to PFF. But when you look at what Porter did this season, growing into the role, it took him a couple of weeks, but when he grew into that role and became the number 1 cornerback for the Pittsburgh Steelers is when it really kind of grew and kind of took this opportunity. The other one was easy. Devon Witherspoon, top 10 pick for the Seattle Seahawks as well. Devon Witherspoon was strong all season, 5'11", 181 pounds. He was the dog of the cornerback grouping. Remember at the top last year, it was Christian Gonzalez in that conversation. Devon Witherspoon was right there. And who was my third cornerback that went off 1 pick later? Emmanuel Forbes, who went to the Washington Commanders, and Forbes did not quite have the same season that a group of these other guys did have. Other than that, Brian Branch played a little bit of nickel, played a lot of safety, played a lot of corner. He played in almost 800 snaps this season for the Detroit Lions. He did deal with an injury, but strong season from Brian Branch. Again, we knew he would come in and be utilized as a weapon on this defense for the Detroit Lions. And Branch came in, again, being drafted in the 2nd round, 45th overall. You kind of see these safeties not get drafted at the top like these other positions do. The safeties kind of become the running back of the defense, where the position just gets kind of pushed down. But Branch, labeled as a safety coming in, ended up playing some corner, played some safety. By position, he had 38 snaps at the defensive line, 117 in the box, 560 at slot, 44 wide at cornerback, 34 at free safety, 4 kick return, and 46 special teams in the blocking unit for field goals. Mostly, though, playing slot corner and box safety. So Brian Branch kind of doing it all, earns one of the defensive back positions here. And the 4th and final one is Christian Izien. Christian Izien played a lot of slot this year for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but was undrafted. So not only do we have Ivan Pace on here, now we got Christian Izien from the Rutgers. What is their logo? What's their mascot now? The Knights, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. There we go. I was trying to dig it up in my brain, but Scarlet Knights, 5'8", 3/4, 199 pounds, 4'4", 340, goes undrafted to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and ends up taking over this role and this opportunity. And Christian Izien finds himself as the 2nd undrafted free agent to make the all-rookie team from RosterWatch. Again, just a loaded group. Again, we talked about Brian Brsay, defensive line, honorable mention. Tuli Tuipulotu from the Chargers was also an honorable mention on the defensive line. And the 3rd and final honorable mention belongs to the one and only Tyreek Stevenson from the Chicago Bears. Tyreek Stevenson played a lot of wide corner. He's a rookie out of Miami. He was a 2nd round pick and played the opposite of Jalen Johnson and was part of that defense progressing over the second half of the season. Tyreek Stevenson played 830 snaps at corner, the 3rd most among all rookies. The only person that played more that wasn't named Devon Witherspoon was Deonte Banks from the New York Giants. Didn't have as quite of a good season. DJ Turner from the Bengals also in that conversation with 827. But 5 of these guys played a ton of snaps in 2023. So that's the entire team right there. I know the defense is not as fun to talk about, and the offensive line is not as fun to talk about as these fantasy-centric guys. But on offense, we'll just recap it here for those that joined in late. C.J. Stroud was the rookie all-first team. Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson at running back. Puka Nacua, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers at wide receiver, Sam Laporta at tight end, and then the honorable mentions all belong to wide receivers, Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, and Tank Dell. The offensive line, DeJuan Jones from the Browns, Steve Avila from the Rams, John Michael Schmitz from the Giants, Peter Skoronski from the Titans, and Paris Johnson from the Arizona Cardinals. Again, if you want to see some more content from RosterWatch this week, we'll be live on Tuesday, 2 o'clock, Thursday, and Friday around 2 o'clock as well, talking all things Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl. We appreciate you guys for tuning in, tapping in. Please click that like button. Please click subscribe. We'll be back for more covering the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl over the course of the next 3-4 weeks. So turn them bells on, click subscribe, stay tuned in, tapped in. And tonight, 8:20 p.m. Eastern time, if you don't want to listen to some BS commentary on ESPN for this Tampa Bay Philadelphia Eagles team, go on over to the Executives of Fantasy Football on YouTube. Join myself, my main man, Matty Kewum. We'll be broadcasting for about an hour and a half or 2 hours during the game tonight, talking about the game, talking about this weekend in this weekend in football, recapping the weekend of games. The Executives of Fantasy Football on YouTube. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.